Welcome back to another edition of the Wolverine.com podcast. This is actually our post-Alabama show. It's been a while. Been sick. Done a little traveling. So, what's the date today, Skene? It's the 11th.
I think it's the 11th. Yeah.
Okay,
Where's
so
my phone, Balas? I don't
yeah.
even know.
Well, the game was played on the 31st, but here we are. And we're not just going to talk about Michigan and Alabama. We're going to talk about Lawrence Hattar, Michigan's addition from Ferris State. We're going to talk about the offensive line play. Andrew Sprague, interested to hear your thoughts on the right tackle, who graded out higher in that Alabama game as a true freshman than anybody else on that line. That doesn't make me feel great, I'll be honest with you. It reminds me of the Mason Cole days when back in the day,
Oh,
before
yeah.
Jim Harbaugh was there, and I remember some guys in the building telling me, I was asking about the offensive line scheme, and I said, "What do you think about Mason Cole?" And they said, "Well, there's good news and bad news. The good news is he's really good for a freshman. The bad news is he's our best offensive lineman right now, and that did not bode well." So, your thoughts overall? First of all, we'll talk about the Alabama win in a second, but I want to hear your thoughts on the offensive line in that game and how they played, and was there an improvement?
Well, I would say that there was an improvement, Balas, but not the kind of improvement to the standards at which the Michigan offensive line needs to operate. And we talked about that throughout the entire season. There were spurts at times, and in this football game, there were spurts where they moved the ball and they protected a little bit better. But overall, collectively, for the Alabama game, it was okay. And then throughout the course of the season, it was not okay for large portions of it. As you've written about many times, we've talked about the pass protection and keeping the quarterback clean was nowhere near where it needs to be. And then on the run effectiveness, streaky at times. Khalil Mullings did a really nice job, but overall, good enough to beat Alabama with some turnover favoritism, obviously on Alabama's part. But overall, nowhere near good enough for the team to achieve what it wants to, which is to be a playoff, win a Big Ten, get into the playoff. The offensive line in 2024, no, not good enough.
No, and let me ask you this, because people are saying, well, there were individual pieces, right? And we've seen Gio Hadi play pretty decent ball here.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a couple other guys play pretty decent ball here. We saw Josh Preeb. You watched his Northwestern film, the kid, and you thought he was a Zach Zinter light and pretty good. And I didn't think he
Mm-hmm.
reached that level this year. And everybody's like, well, you just want to blame Grant Newsom, and you want to blame Sharon, you want to blame the line, and so on and so forth. But to me, you're not looking to blame anybody. You're just trying to get to the bottom of, okay, why was this not good enough? And was it scheme? You said at times they were looking, it looked like they were trying to do things. They were asked to do things they probably shouldn't have been in position to be asked to do. There are times guys just individually didn't do well. There are times that there were run throughs that Sharon Moore talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Is it coaching? Is it individual play? Is it a combination of both? What, in your
It's
opinion?
it's a combination of a few things. So, and in no particular order.
Hmm.
We saw on multiple occasions, none more glaring than the first play of the Oregon game, where it appears to me that the offensive linemen either aren't making the individual calls at the line to change their blocking advantages, or they're not allowed to, or they've not been put into a position where it's even available to them. Again, the worst example all year long, the first snap of the Oregon game, Al Hadi has the young guy who's the Michigan State transfer to Oregon. He's going to be a really good NFL player, I think. Way out, way right, right? So imagine you're playing right guard. This dude's playing on the inside shoulder of the right tackle. And on that snap, it's a sweep to the right, a toss, or whatever, a wide handoff. It doesn't matter. They asked Al Hadi to go out and reach block that guy. He has no chance of making that block. And the right tackle, he fans out to try to go get the edge. And the edge defender that the right tackle was trying to go get was nowhere close. So a well-oiled offensive line would say the right tackle and right guard would make a call of some kind and just switch it. It's commonly called a gap and fold. The right tackle would come down with a better angle and seal that defensive lineman inside, and the right guard would come out and pull to go take the guy that the right tackle was going to go get. Why didn't we do that? Why didn't we do that in that situation? Why didn't we do it in so many other situations? And maybe it's a tell that, either they didn't install these things for the offensive line to make these calls on their own. This is not something, Balas, that as an offensive lineman, You get down in your stance. You can't go, oh, wait, let's look to the sideline and see what the coach wants me to do. No, you have to make those decisions out there on your own. So we didn't see enough of that throughout the course of the season. And then the other thing, the adjustments to scheme. And I think it was the Oregon game and a couple other games where Sharon had mentioned we got some run throughs. Well, as you progress through the season, and a defense knows that you like to gap and combo block up to backside or front side, whatever Michigan's tendencies were, linebackers start to go, oh, okay. As soon as I see a certain formation, and as soon as I see the uncovered lineman go to gap block or double team on somebody, I'm firing through my assigned gap. And we struggled at times way late in the season to pick up on those things and adjust. And then that reverts back to your technique. So if you're an offensive lineman and you're combo blocking to a linebacker, whether it's front side or backside, if you get your shoulders turned at all as the pairing, partner offensive line, and this linebacker comes around the top because of your angle of your hips and shoulders, you have no chance of picking up that scraping linebacker because you're physically out of position. It can't be done. So the technique wasn't as good throughout the course of the season to be able to adjust to those things. Yeah, it got a little bit better at times, but again, overall 2024, not good enough. And then the last point I'll make about the offensive line, which I talked about, you and I chatted about and texted throughout the course of the season, an overall lack of ass-kicking, flat-out violence, aggression. So many times, especially in pass protection, guys in a help position, you come out of your stance, you don't have a defensive lineman immediately over the top of you or a linebacker, you're in a help position, you check inside out in your blitz protection, whatever it happens to be, and then you don't have a fight on your hands. So you've got to help either left or right. And time again, our guys are standing there watching their line mate battle with a dude, or they're just kind of putting a hand out there, posting an arm, which is normal. Why not go tee off on somebody? Why not go knock the living shit out of somebody to slow somebody down? And those are the three things that just need to get better for Michigan's offensive line next year. And, Preeb in the run blocking and his highlight reel coming out of Northwestern showed some nice things, certainly big and strong and athletic enough. And all those guys up there, Balas, all the dudes that played this year, big enough, tall enough, long enough, athletic enough to be able to do all the things I just talked about. The question in my mind is, why aren't we doing them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And how much of that is a true freshman or a redshirt freshman at right tackle? Maybe when you're talking about switching things up and stuff like that, this kid isn't experienced enough, but you would think with a guard in El Hadi next to him that all it would be a simple thing. Hey, I'm going to do this. You do this. Is that
Yeah,
right?
well, listen, first of all, to play offensive line at that level and really beyond high school, things get complex enough. These dudes are all smart enough to do this. I mean, if I can do it years ago, if we could do it,
Yeah,
these young guys are
for
smart.
sure.
They
For
can do
sure.
it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, who are we talking about? So if the group of Neanderthals that I played with could figure out how to make adjustments on the fly, then these guys could do it. So even if it's a young guy, then yeah, you take somebody on that offensive line who's got some more experience to make the call. And in that Oregon game situation that I was describing earlier, that call would be the guy who can't make the block. In that scenario, that would have been Al Hadi.
Yeah.
Al Hadi would have turned to his tackle and said, what you do, 1, 2, 3, whatever the call was, and brought his tackle down. The guard would have made that call because he was the one that was in the impossible block scenario. And you just make the call and it's over.
Yeah.
And so inexperience does play a role, but with practice and walkthroughs and film prep, no, that's not an excuse. It can be done.
Yeah, especially when you've got a bunch of veterans up there, guys who played a lot of football, and you would think there's a natural progression, right? Like you guys when you were younger and you learned from the guys in front of you. And let's be clear here, they learned from some damn good linemen, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is not like it was in the past when, okay, you're learning from a bunch of guys who didn't do it right. Yeah, like in the Brady Hoke era, I hate to say it, that was terrible. You got we've got to really teach this and set the standard for the guys coming behind us, like you guys learned from John Vitale, you guys learned learned from the Mike Huzars and people like that. They had the Trevor Keegans, they had the Zach Zinners, guys
Mhm.
like that, and it just has not translated for some reason. And I'm not putting it all on Grant Newsome, right? I'm not. He's a 27-year-old coach. I think he's got a bright future. At the same time, the buck stops there with these guys. And Sharon Moore, who has done it, and he said when he got the job, he said, we're going to continue to have great offensive line play here. We're going to continue to smash. And in year one, it was not up to par. So it's going to be interesting to me to see how they fix this, Skene. Do you think it's going to be better personnel, or do you think it's going to be just more teaching, more hands on?
So there's a progression of a guy. You mentioned a young guy getting in the lineup and learning on the fly and learning what game speed is versus practice speed and all those things. It's no different for Grant Newsome. So in year two, I would expect to see more advancements of his unit. In year two, I would expect to see more aggression out of his
Hmm.
unit. And then the other thing that's going to happen is Coach Moore is going to have a tighter eyeball on his young offensive line coach to make sure these things are happening, because I guarantee you Coach Moore is turning on the film, watching linebacker run throughs and pressure on his quarterback, and they're having difficulty running the ball, and they're the dog shit 130th offense in the country. Coach Moore is going to have to do something different to ensure that the five guys up front and are getting it done for next year, especially with the talented young quarterback, a young quarterback who's going to want to do some things back there and not get drilled and destroyed every time he drops back into the pocket or rolls out, whatever it is. And so the progression of the coaching staff is part of the deal as well.
Yeah.
And so, I think Grant did okay in his first year as offensive line. I did see some improvement. I thought Crippen, and when the center position finally got settled, I thought Crippen settled in and did a nice job. So
Okay.
credit there. I thought El Hadi should have finished the season better than he did overall collectively. I back to the freshman that played there in the Alabama game. That's really encouraging, and I
Yeah.
think Evan Link at right tackle. Listen, Balas, struggled at times, got bent at the waist sometimes in pass pro, and gave up some edge pressures and some hits. That dude can move, man. That
Okay.
that's a big, strong, athletic guy that moves really well. I think if he stays at it and refines his game and then mixes in a little piss and vinegar with all of them, he's going to be a really good player. So the talent is there. This is not the Brady Hoke era where we had some offensive linemen that's like, damn, man, would this guy even start at Eastern Michigan? And
Yeah.
yet, he's just in the starting lineup for us. The premium is on the position. Coach Moore understands it. Grant Newsome was one of those ass-kicking offensive linemen back in the day. They just got to fix a few things and focus on a few things here coming into the spring and fall, and this is all fixable. It needs to be fixed desperately.
What about Link moving to guard? Because it certainly seems to me that that's more of a natural position for him.
I think he'd do great at it, again,
Yeah.
because he moves so well. I mean, the
Would
dude
you
can.
rather see him there though than tackle? Because it certainly seemed to me that there was just maybe his feet just weren't quick enough at times
Well, I guess
against.
I don't know. I don't know that I'm there. I don't know that
All
I'm there.
right.
Like time to pull the plug on him as a tackle, because I saw him so many times get out of his stance and pass sets, and with plenty of room, plenty of availability with his space and his feet, and then at the moment of impact, in that fractional moment of time when you have to keep your posture and your torso needs to be in a certain position and you can't turn the shoulders, it was just a technique failure. So again, I don't think there's an ability issue here, but if they did move him to guard, he would do really well there because the dude can move.
Yeah.
I think it was the Michigan State game. There was a play where we brought the tight end down. Speaking of gap and fold, the tight end comes down and they pull Link to get out on the edge. Man, that dude got out of his stance so fast, Balas, and got out there and had a really, really good block to spring a touchdown. I was like, wow, it's really nice out of that guy. So the indicators are there for success for a guy like Link, and the other dudes, they all showed wow, look at that block. We just need more of it and more consistently. And again, more aggression in
Yeah.
the act of doing your assignment.
Yeah, they had some of those guys that were doing that obviously in previous years. So let's talk a little bit about Andrew Sprague again. Did you keep an eye on him quite a bit? I mean, first start out there, you're playing against Alabama. This is a very good athletic defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I watched him, and to my untrained eye, a little more trained thanks to you over the years, I thought he did pretty well. And I
Yeah.
thought for a true freshman, and John Jansen had told me, he said, man, keep an eye on this kid. He told me early in the year, he said, this is a kid. John Jansen, obviously being the former Michigan All-American, All-American, who's now Michigan's color commentator for Michigan radio, and he said it wouldn't surprise me if this kid was starting at right tackle by the end of the year. So which excites me because I can see a Link Sprague right side. If you got Crippen in there and he improves, maybe move El Hadi back to left guard, where I thought he played better at left guard than he did at right. Maybe there's something to that. I know you say they're interchangeable, but maybe some guys are just more comfortable. But then
Mhm.
then it's about finding a left tackle. But to me, I thought Sprague did a really nice job for a
Yeah,
first
he
time.
did. I mean, again, the first thing you look when you see a guy out there, well, first of all, the moment itself. True freshman, your first start is in the bowl game against Alabama. I can guarantee you, Balas, if I could go back in time, I would have had a little bit of a tight chest in that moment, right? That's
Yeah,
a lot to ask of a young guy. So, of course, a lot of eyeballs on him, but I'm watching him. He's getting out of his stance fine. Body language, he looked comfortable. You didn't see him turning his head to his line mates asking, what's the snap count, or forgetting shit out there because,
yeah,
oh my God, I'm out here to play against Alabama. He looked comfortable, which is an indication that Newsom had him ready to go mentally and that he was comfortable out there with his guys. And then in pass protection, comes out of his stance. Balance was good. Didn't see, yeah, I don't think he got thrown on his head. He didn't get bull rush. He didn't give up any terrible smashes on the quarterback. Maybe, obviously not perfect. I doubt he graded out at 90 or above,
mm-mm.
but for a first start in that moment, did a really nice job. So yeah, add that to the point I'm making earlier. There's dudes in the offensive line room that have the size, length, and athleticism to go out there and be really good players. Sprague's one of them. And so just add him to the list. It's exciting because these dudes can be good, Balas. That's really good.
They got to be. And Juan Castillo's back as an analyst. He was actually worked for Andy Reid with the Philadelphia Eagles when they were getting to the NFC Championship game repeatedly. He's a great coach. I think that's going to help. Jim Harbaugh had him here at one point. He can be hands-on now. So I think that was a calculated move by Sharon Moore saying, "Hey, okay, I'm going to give my young coach some help here too." And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with saying that. This is not you're not cutting the guy down saying, "Okay, we got a glimpse of who he is as a first time coach. Let's get him a little help and let's get him on that trajectory, right? Young coaches, like you said, improve too. So I'll be
Yeah.
interested to see what his impact is as well. But to me, everybody talks about the quarterback and it wasn't good enough. We all know that, right? And I said in the preseason, I said in the spring, they need to upgrade that room. And I know for a fact they expected Jack Tuttle to be the guy. He comes out and he wasn't healthy. So when he gets healthy, then he gets hurt again. We saw some flashes against Washington, but what you cannot do is put Bryce Underwood in harm's way the way you did Devin Gardner in 2013 when he got hit 28 times against Michigan State. You are
Mm-mm.
going to ruin a quarterback that way. And I'm not predicting that. Okay. I'm not saying, okay, Bryce Underwood's in trouble. They're going to waste him, so on and so forth. But I am saying that line was just as responsible as anybody else for the offense's failures this year.
So offensively, where did we finish in the passing game, Ballas?
129.
129, 130th. Kind of lived
Just
there all year.
just above Iowa, one spot
Yeah.
above Iowa, and then the three service academies were behind
Yes.
them. Yeah,
Yes. Exactly. So, and then you start to say, well, why is that? Well, it always starts with protection up front, and I don't care who the quarterback is, whether it's a veteran guy like Tuttle who's played a lot of years in college football, or a brand new dude like Underwood's going to be. You have to protect him and let the quarterback get comfortable. Look at any football game, Balas. Doesn't matter if it's the NFL, well, although the NFL guys handle it better, but certainly in college. Look at the Texas-Ohio State game. Did Ewers ever really look comfortable in
no,
that pocket back in there?
not in the
No.
least.
No, Ohio State was getting after him, sacking him, hitting him. And you could see where his eyeballs are going down, worried about his protection because Ohio State got back in there early, just like we did against Ohio State in our game against them. So it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. The standards are always the same. No one touches the quarterback. So that has to be part of the deal. And so going into next year, yeah, get him some help. You got the talent in the room. Change the way you talk, change the way you practice some things, and go out there with a new standard that no one touches it. It just has to be that way. And then running football wise, Balas, I think the best we got with running offense, certainly after the USC game, things kind of spiked up. I think we finished middle of the road. You have 130 teams. I think we're 50, 60th, somewhere in there with a rushing offense
Yeah,
in the course of the season. So you want to help a young quarterback, you got to run the football to take the pressure off of him. and then you better protect when the time comes when it's second and third and long. It's not complicated, Balas.
Right.
It really isn't.
No, it doesn't seem like it. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. I'm excited because I got the defense. I do want to give a shout out to that defense against Alabama. All those guys that were missing and what they accomplished up front, I thought was fantastic. And there were at one point down the stretch, we were on the field at the end of the game there, which was fun. Great atmosphere, by the way. And everybody says these games don't matter. We've said it. I'll tell you what, it mattered to them when they were on the field and the fans were loud. It felt like it was fun. It felt like a great college football game. And no, it's not. They're not playing for the national title game like they were last year, but it still meant something to these guys, and you could see them fighting, and you could feel it. But there were 11 guys out there, Skene, that we're going to be playing comeback next year. That all so I
Yeah.
think that really bodes well for the future.
So Balas, you were there in person. We
Yeah.
watched it on television, right?
Yep.
Did you notice, or if you look back and you think about what you saw, did you notice a body language and a swagger defensively
Yes.
out of that defense? Certainly
Absolutely.
after the second turnover, these dudes are flying around,
Yeah.
having an absolute ball. And then the rain comes. These guys were having so much fun out there, and you could just see it. They were collectively celebrating together, high-fiving, having fun. And then offensively, you ever see that throughout the course of the season very often? Offensively, the offensive line out there, bobbing the head, like, yeah, we got this.
Yeah.
Not really ever there, right?
Yeah.
So just this is what we see emotionally and football execution-wise out of the Michigan defense, and certainly toward the end of the season, which was outstanding. Boy, they really came together. They got their groove. That's what we have to see offensively. So the blueprint for success, even though it's the opposite side of the football, the blueprint for success is on the opposite side of Schembecker Hall. It's right down the hall. They still use the defensive meeting room. It's on the north side of the building over there, and that's where the defense meets. The swagger that's in that room has to find its way to the offensive room. Somebody, usually 2 or 3 or 4 guys, have to do it. And then defensively, Rayshon Benny and Stewart, the defensive end, those dudes dialed up some pressure and were having a ball, and it's like, wow. Coach Martindale and his defensive staff, hats off to you guys, because they never quit, and the trajectory for them just got better and better and better and better as the season went on. And of course, I read your article, and they talked about it in the postseason. They got comfortable with what they were expected to do. They got comfortable with having to study more and understand more, and they went out there, but somehow they did it with the piss and vinegar and aggression that we have to see on the other side of the ball. It was great to watch.
Yeah, and special teams, Dominic Zvada, best kicker in the country, no question.
Unbelievable,
about it.
That dude. Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. And we had Jake Moody here 3-4 years ago. So what does that tell you about Michigan's kicking game? So outstanding. I do want to talk about next year again in a minute. I do want to talk about Lawrence Hattar, though. I asked you to watch some film on the Ferris State transfer, D2. This kid comes from Livonia, Michigan, and there have been guys like that have gone to Ferris and gone up a level and gone to the pros. We've seen guys like Joe Staley, who went to Rockford, Central Michigan, went to the pros, that are capable. I asked you to watch the D2 championship game. A lot of people are saying, okay, Lawrence Hattar is going to be depth. A lot of people are saying, okay, this kid could be starting next year. Is he better than the guards that Michigan have coming back now, in your opinion, or is this a guy that is going to be a rotational piece? Is this a guy that's just there for depth?
Well, so comparing to the guys that Michigan has, so Al-Hadi's got another year, I think, right? So Al-Hadi will be back. Preeb is done. I think Preeb's out, right? So I can only compare it to Al-Hadi because those are the guys I watch most of the time. There's some other dudes in there, obviously, but and so I turned on the Division II championship game against Valdosta there, and one thing that struck me right away. Having a child who played in Northwood, I watched Ferris for 4 straight years. And the thing that Tony Anise has always had at Ferris is giant offensive tackles. 6'7", some dudes 6'8" on both sides of the line, or both sides of the ball, right and left tackle. But usually, in my view, and it's been a few years since I've watched Ferris play, but then you drop down in 6'2", 6'3" centers and guards. Not this last year's team. Holy crap, Balas. That Ferris offensive line was 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" across the line. And Hattar was no different. So you're talking about a 6'5", 6'6" dude here, 300 pounds, and moves really well, right? So they did a lot of slide stuff because their quarterbacks got great feet and can move. So a lot of slide protection, a lot of zone blocking. Ask their offensive linemen to get out and move around in space, screens and stuff like that. So again, here's the good news: checks all the boxes. Tall, athletic, lengthy, can move. Right? He's got the God-given talent to do those things. In the championship game, he was playing against a dude from Valdosta a lot of times. Dude had to have been 400 pounds, Balas.
Really?
I don't know. Did you see the defensive lineman?
I did not. No.
Okay, maybe
But that's
too
fun to
critical.
watch. Yeah.
So the dude was, probably 6'2", maybe. He had to have been 375 something.
Did you have Chester McLaughlin flashbacks?
I had, what I had flashbacks of watching him play against that dude was Refrigerator Perry. If you guys remember the fridge. His brother Michael Perry played for the Philadelphia Eagles in the one season I spent in Philadelphia, and I had to block that dude or try to block that dude. And there's no moving guys like that in run blocking. So I'm watching Hattar try to move this bowling ball guy who's probably super strong in there, having a hard time moving him. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here against other defensive tackles. But he, again, do I think he's going to be just depth? No, I think he's going to be more than that. Do I think he could be a starting offensive lineman in Michigan? Could be. The one thing he's going to have to do, and again, I only watched one game, he's going to be more aggressive. And the one thing in the game I watched there against Valdosta when he was combo blocking, he's doing a lot of up high shoulder kind of stuff. An effective double teaming Balas. You want to move somebody, you got to hit them down in the hip if you're the helping or the uncovered lineman. If you hit somebody in the midsection or the hip, they're going to move. If you hit them up high, they're like a weeble wobble. Remember those Balas?
Yes, yeah, of course.
You hit them up high, they don't really go anywhere. So he's got to get down in the midsection on his combo work with his covered offensive lineman. But I'm watching this guy and going, yeah, he looks the part. Put him in the Michigan uniform. He's as good as other guys I've seen in the last 5-10 years try to get in there and compete. So he physically checks the box. He can move, and he should be a factor come this spring to see where he's going to be coming out of the depth. I don't know. So I didn't see a guy that's like, oh my gosh, here's our new left guard. I didn't see that. But I saw a guy who was like, yeah, this dude could do it if he gets comfortable fast with the offense. And then again, throws in a little bit better technique with his combo work, but athletically he can pass pro, he can move, so should be good enough to try to get out there on that field.
Yeah, and his offensive line coach, we are in a group chat with Bill Simonson of the Huge Show, and he said this kid's got a nasty streak too. So hope to see that because I know that you love that. Taught to you by Steve Everett, not inherent with you, Gentle Giant. So, but you became that guy. You became the asshole that we all loved and watched out there. So, which is great. So, all right, let's talk real quick about the elephant in the room here, the national championship game, Ohio State and Notre Dame. It's like, okay, my first thought when I watched these two games was, all right, what else is on next Monday?
I don't think I can watch it.
Yeah, and it's like it's not who you root for; it's who you root against. And I'm not one of these guys. Though we are not Michigan State fans, with all due respect. Where it's like, oh God, if they win, it's going to be the worst day of my life. And I know how are we gonna, two things. Michigan got their national championship last year, 15-0, won the game in not a watered down playoff. Neither of these two teams would have been in the playoff last year. That's the funny part about this. They had to expand the playoff for them. And the reason they did this was to give people a mulligan, if we're being honest. Michigan kicked your ass at home.
Wait a minute.
You'll never live that down.
You mean Northern Illinois at home was a bad loss?
It was a horrible loss. That's the best part about this. And the two teams both had, as 20-point favorites, had losses at home, and one of them to their rival. And will not convince me otherwise, and I know this to be true, that national championship will be this much emptier because they did not beat Michigan. I believe it was Woody Hayes that said you cannot be a national champion without winning the game. So that's your God, people saying.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt them forever. So some of my customers and some of my coworkers are big Buckeye fans, and we have a lot of fun with this. And so of course I'm texting with them and congratulating them on their team winning these games. And then I have told a couple of them, if you go on and win this all, the whole thing, get the big trophy, that's cool, good for you guys. Michigan people, we will always giggle about this because you're going to be 11-2, and you're going to be the best 11-2 national champion who lost to a dog shit rival. in in so many years. I think it was the last time a 2-loss team, what Stapleton said, was the 2007 LSU team.
Yeah.
But Balas, back to the game itself, these are the two most hated teams in my life.
Yeah.
And I just like, oh my God. So I like the Notre Dame coach, the head coach.
I do too.
I think he's a good guy. I seem to like the way he carries himself, the way he talks about his team. I like him. I really have grown to like him, even though it's Notre Dame. I still hate Notre Dame. I have no use for Notre Dame. Notre Dame can vanish off the world of college football, and I'd be all right with that. And of course, we don't have to talk about Ohio State, but the players themselves, just with the game itself, I think the Notre Dame defensive front against Ohio State's offensive line, which is their weak link. Ohio State's offensive line is their weak link. I understand they got injuries. I think there's some vulnerabilities there in the OSU offensive line, specifically at right tackle. I think they can get some edge pressure over there if they get into the right matchups over there. That dude at right tackle against Texas was getting away with absolute street crime with the holding calls that weren't called. It was unbelievable. Even the television people were going back, showing replays of how bad this dude was tackling guys and no penalties. Yeah. So I think there's some chances there. I do think Ohio State probably wins this game. They got a few more weapons offensively if they can find a way to compensate for their soft offensive line. But, it is what it is. I don't even know if I'm going to watch it. First of all, it's on stupid Monday night. The game's not going to end until 1 o'clock in the morning. Do I want to stay up to watch Ohio State and Notre Dame celebrate? No, I'm not doing that. I'll check the headline in the morning. No.
Yeah, and for those people who are having a hard time, you got to remember that one of these fan bases that you hate is going to be extremely disappointed, devastated as well. So that's the other side of the coin, right? It's like these people that flood your message boards. We got a clown on one of the message boards that pretends to be a Michigan fan, and he talks about Michigan. Oh, that loss to Michigan didn't matter. The fact that you got on a message board pretending to be a Michigan fan saying that shows exactly how much it matters to you.
Balas, in the broadcast of the Texas-Ohio State game, I tried keeping track of how many times they talked about the Michigan loss.
Yeah.
Oh, it's still a deal. It will always be a deal.
Yes, it will.
And forever. Let's say Ohio State wins this thing and they get their rings, everything else. For the rest of these guys' lives, there'll be a little part of their heart that's just missing. And I understand it, having lost rivalry games in my own life. It doesn't matter what you do after that. It always hurts, and forever will always hurt these guys.
I'm going to get a shirt, the schedule shirt, the national championship schedule shirts. I wonder if they'll be selling those, number one, because you'll have the score of the Michigan game on there. Like, hey, national champs, and here's our schedule throughout the year. 15-0. There are no blemishes. But I might get the shirt with the schedule on the front, and then the back, with an asterisk. You want to talk about an asterisk? They're talking about Michigan's national championship being an asterisk. The asterisk is you did not win the game that you came back to win. That is the game that you came back to when you already failed. Doesn't matter what else you do now. You already failed. And Woody Hayes would tell you that too.
I think that I think the Buckeyes and their annual season goals, every team in America makes a set of goals, and the number one goal.
Yes.
Beat Michigan.
Didn't do it.
Win the Big Ten.
Yep. Didn't do it.
Win the national championship. Yep. And crazy because of the scenario and the way college football works now, you can get the last one, which is the biggest trophy of them all, but you may not get the other ones, which may mean the most heartfelt ones that you wanted the most.
We saw Jack Sawyer grabbing that flag and running away like Shooter McGavin running with the green jacket that was Happy Gilmore's at the end of the game, at the end of the Masters there. Yeah. He's the yellow jacket and he's running down and people are chasing him. That was Jack Sawyer with the Michigan flag. So Jack Owen Foyer. So
I'll tell you what, Sawyer is one of the better defensive ends. He's really good at getting his hands up, Balas. He's a good player.
Yeah,
He's a really good player.
he's also a big crybaby, and he didn't beat Michigan. So
He's
congratulations,
a good
Jack.
football player, Balas. If he
Yep.
were wearing the Michigan uniform, we would be happy to have him.
Yeah, I know. And you know what? People are taking it for granted. You never know in these games. Okay, you never know.
Yeah,
So if Notre Dame comes out and punches them in the mouth, Texas damn well could have beaten that Ohio State team.
they could have.
My last question to you is, how did you feel about that second and goal call from the half-yard line, the pitch? And if you were an offensive guard out there, would you have called timeout and gone and kicked Les Miles in the balls or something, or
Um,
or
uh,
Gary Moeller or somebody?
uh, the, uh, the Texas offensive line has got a lot of guys played a lot of football. I think their center set a record for Texas with starts or something like that. Really good. So when Sarkisian goes with a bunch of passing plays and some wide zone stuff that got them to go backwards, I guarantee you those dudes are going to be forever pissed about
Yeah.
that set of play calls there. First and goal from the 1 yard line, and they went
Oh,
backwards. They gave him. I think they tried one play between the tackles. It didn't
yeah.
work. That happens sometimes.
Yeah. So try it
Um,
again.
Try it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, we got this. But no, they didn't. But again, I kind of felt like the foundation was crumbling for the Longhorns, and I just my buddies who are all Texas A&M fans from high school, they're like, yours is going to throw a pick, yours is going to crumble here late in the game, and they did.
Yep.
And then the other thing that we learned in the playoffs, Ballas, is that James Franklin is still James Franklin.
Oh yeah.
In the big games. So you got victory right here in your hands, and whoops, there it goes. Because
Because he sucks as a big game coach.
He's terrible in these
Yeah.
games.
Yeah.
He's always there's gonna be some kind of thing that happens at some point. There's a reason he's 1-15 against top 5 teams.
He was gifted this draw to get him to the quarterfinal or the semifinal. He was gifted it. Let's be honest, and he somehow found a way to screw it up. So, congratulations, James. That's about as close as you're ever going to get. So, he's Doug Skene. I'm Chris Balas. Thanks for joining us, Skene. I appreciate it. Sorry, folks, this was so late. Again, we will be back in a couple weeks. We're going to try to get a special guest on here in the next couple of weeks. We'll see if it works out, that you guys would absolutely love. And we're going to do some guests here. I'm going to bring Skene back because he is he makes the Balas and Skene show. My name may be first, but everybody's here. Everybody's here to see you. I begrudgingly admit it. So, but we're going to get a couple of people on here that some guests and get Skene on a little bit more often. But Skene, I appreciate it. Can't wait to see you up north golfing here in a couple months too. But we'll do a few
4
podcasts
months.
before then. Yeah,
4 months,
4-3. I know, time
Working
flies. Yeah. So, hey, how you doing? You getting in shape?
Yeah, I'm riding the bike 6 days a week.
Attaboy.
I'm not running down the sideline.
All right. Good man. All right. We'll talk soon, and thanks again, Skene.
All right, go blue.